The air in our cozy kitchen was thick with the scent of coffee every morning. But today, something was off. The rich, earthy aroma I loved was laced with a sharp chemical tang that made my stomach churn. When I picked up Daniel's mug for a sip, the taste wasn't just bitter, it was wrong. That single sip unraveled a secret he'd been hiding for years, one that would tear our quiet life apart. What was in that mug, and what was my husband hiding? The sun barely crept through the blinds of our suburban Seattle home, casting thin stripes of light across the kitchen counter. I stood by the sink, rinsing breakfast dishes, while the familiar gurgle of the coffee maker filled the room. Daniel, my husband of 8 years, sat at the table, scrolling through his phone, his dark hair still damp from his shower. He was a creature of habit. Black coffee, no sugar, in his favorite blue ceramic mug. Every morning, like clockwork, he'd brew a pot, pour a cup, and settle into his routine. But today, the air felt different. The coffee's usual comforting aroma was undercut by something acrid, almost medicinal, like bleach or paint thinner. "Smells weird today," I said, wrinkling my nose as I dried my hands on a dish towel. "Did you buy new beans?" Daniel didn't look up from his phone. "Same as always, Claire. Maybe the machine needs cleaning." His voice was calm, but there was a slight edge to it, a tightness I'd noticed more often lately. Daniel was a software engineer, meticulous and steady, the kind of man who color-coded his calendar and never left dishes in the sink. We'd met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions, and shared dreams of a quiet life. Now, at 34, we had that life, a modest house, a golden retriever named Max, and a rhythm that felt safe if a little predictable. But the past few months, something had shifted. He'd been distant, working late, disappearing into his home office for hours. I chalked it up to stress. His company was developing some big new app. But the chemical smell in the kitchen wasn't stress. It was real. I walked over to the coffee maker, a sleek stainless steel model we'd splurged on last Christmas. The pot was half full, the dark liquid steaming. I leaned closer, inhaling deeply. The sharp chemical scent hit me again, stronger. Now, like ammonia mixed with something metallic. My eyes watered slightly. "Seriously, Daniel, this isn't right. Smell it." I pushed the pot toward him. He glanced up, his hazel eyes flickering with something. Annoyance, maybe? "It's fine, Claire. You're imagining things." He took a long sip from his mug, as if to prove a point, then went back to his phone. I frowned. Maybe I was overreacting. I'd been on edge lately, too, juggling my freelance graphic design work and the pressure to start a family, something Daniel kept dodging, but my gut wouldn't let it go. I grabbed his mug when he set it down, ignoring his raised eyebrow. "Let me try it," I said, lifting it to my lips. The liquid hit my tongue, and I gagged. It wasn't coffee. Well, it was, but it was wrong. Bitter, chemical, with a faint oily aftertaste that coated my mouth. I spit it into the sink, coughing. "Daniel, what the hell is this?" I held up the mug, my voice sharper than I intended. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood. "It's just coffee, Claire. Maybe you're not used to it." Black. His tone was defensive, his hands shoved into his pockets. I stared at him, my heart pounding. Daniel never snapped like that. And he knew I drank coffee black sometimes. This wasn't about taste. It was something else. I set the mug down, my hands trembling. "There's something in this. It's not normal." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're being dramatic. I've been drinking it all morning. I'm fine." But his eyes darted to the mug, then back to me too quickly. I didn't push it further. Not then. Daniel left for work, his briefcase in hand. Max trailing him to the door for a quick pat. But as the front door clicked shut, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the coffee maker. The chemical smell lingered, faint but undeniable. I poured a fresh cup from the pot, careful not to touch the liquid, and set it on the counter. I wasn't imagining this. Something was wrong, and I was going to find out what. That afternoon, I took a sample of the coffee to a local lab, a small independent place that tested water and food safety. It felt ridiculous, like I was playing detective in some bad TV show, but I couldn't shake the taste of that sip. The lab tech, a friendly woman named Priya, promised results in a few days. Could be contamination, she said, swirling the sample. Or something else. We'll see. Back home, I cleaned the coffee maker thoroughly, checking every part for residue or tampering. Nothing looked out of place. But when Daniel came home that night, he didn't make his usual evening coffee. Instead, he grabbed a beer from the fridge and retreated to his office, the door clicking shut behind him. I stood outside, listening to the faint tap of his keyboard, wondering what he was hiding. Over the next few days, I watched him closely. He was still drinking his morning coffee, but now he brewed it when I was out of the kitchen, and he washed his mug immediately after. He was careful, too careful. I started noticing other things. A locked drawer in his desk, late-night phone calls he took in the garage, a faint chemical smell on his clothes when he came home from work. My suspicions grew, but I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed proof. The lab results came back on the 4th day. Priya called me, her voice hesitant. The coffee had traces of a chemical compound, something called dimethyl sulfate. It's toxic, used in industrial processes, not something you'd find in coffee beans or a dirty machine. My stomach dropped. Toxic? Like, how bad? Bad, she said. Small amounts can cause nausea, dizziness. Larger doses. Worse. You need to figure out how it got in there. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Dimethyl sulfate wasn't something you accidentally spilled into a coffee pot. Someone had put it there, and the only person who touched that coffee was Daniel. I couldn't look at Daniel the same way after the lab call. He was still the man I'd married, charming, methodical, quick with a smile when he wanted to be. But now every gesture felt calculated, every word, a potential lie. That night, as he slept beside me, I lay awake, replaying every moment of the past few months. The late nights, the locked drawer, the chemical smell. Was he trying to hurt me? Or was he hiding something else? I started small, careful not to tip him off. The next morning, I pretended to sleep in, listening as he moved through his routine. The coffee maker hissed, the mug clinked. And then I heard the faint sound of a cabinet opening. Not the one where we kept the coffee beans, but a higher one, rarely used. I waited until he left for work, then checked the cabinet. Behind a stack of old cookbooks, I found a small, unmarked vial filled with a clear liquid. My hands shook as I held it up to the light. No label, no clue what it was, but it smelled faintly like the coffee, sharp and chemical. I didn't touch the liquid. Instead, I took a photo, hid the vial back in its place, and drove to the lab. Priya confirmed it was dimethyl sulfate, the same compound from the coffee. "This is serious, Claire," she said, her eyes wide. "You need to go to the police." But I couldn't. Not yet. Daniel was my husband. I needed to understand why. Was he poisoning himself? Me? Or was this something else entirely? I decided to dig deeper, starting with his office. Daniel's home office was his sanctuary, a small room off the living room with a desk, a computer, and shelves of tech books. He'd always been private about it, but he'd never locked the door before. Now, it was always closed, and I'd caught him slipping a key into his pocket a few times. That night, After he fell asleep, I crept downstairs with a flashlight and a paperclip, determined to get into that locked drawer. The lock was simple, and after a few minutes of fumbling, it clicked open. Inside were files, financial records, work emails, nothing unusual at first glance. But beneath them was a small notebook, its pages filled with handwritten numbers and codes. No names, no context, just strings of digits and cryptic abbreviations, like DS12 and Batch 4. One entry caught my eye. Test phase complete. Subject stable, increased dosage. My heart pounded. Subject? Dosage? Was this about the coffee? Was Daniel experimenting on someone? On me? I snapped photos of every page, then locked the drawer and slipped back to bed, my mind spinning. The next day, I started following the breadcrumbs. Daniel worked for a tech company called Nexlify, a startup focused on health apps. I'd never paid much attention to his job. Coding wasn't exactly riveting dinner conversation, but now I wondered if it was connected. I searched Nexlify's website, but it was all vague buzzwords about optimizing human potential. No mention of chemicals or experiments. I needed more, so I took a risk. Daniel had a work laptop he sometimes brought home, password protected but often left on his desk. While he was out running errands, I booted it up. The password was easy to guess. Our wedding date. Something. He used for everything. The desktop was cluttered with files, but one folder stood out. Project Elysium. Inside were documents filled with scientific jargon, terms like neuroenhancement and chemical augmentation. One file mentioned dimethyl sulfate as a catalyst in a formula designed to enhance cognitive function. My blood ran cold. Was Daniel part of some secret experiment? I copied the files to a USB drive, then shut down the laptop. I needed answers, but confronting him directly felt too dangerous. Instead, I started tracking his movements. He'd been leaving the house at odd hours, claiming meetings or gym sessions. The next evening, when he said he was going for a run, I followed him in my car, keeping my distance. He didn't go to the gym. He drove to an industrial park on the edge of town, a cluster of gray buildings surrounded by chain-link fences. He parked outside a nondescript warehouse, glanced around, and slipped inside. I waited, my heart racing, then crept closer. The windows were too high to see through, but I heard voices, low, urgent, multiple people. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was tense, like an argument. I drove home before he could spot me, my mind racing. What was Daniel doing in a warehouse? Was this about the chemical in the coffee? I needed to know more, but I also needed to protect myself. I started keeping a journal, documenting everything: the vial, the notebook, the warehouse. If something happened to me, there'd be a record. The warehouse haunted me. I couldn't stop picturing Daniel slipping through that door, his face tense, hiding something. I had to know what was inside, but I couldn't just walk in. So, I did the next best thing. I started researching the address. It belonged to a company called Elysium Labs, a name that matched the Project Elysium folder on Daniel's laptop. A quick search revealed little, just a bare-bones website claiming they were a biotech research firm. No details, no employee names, no clear purpose. It screamed secrecy. I decided to go back to the warehouse, this time during the day when Daniel was at work. I parked a block away, dressed in a hoodie and jeans to blend in, and approached on foot. The building looked even more unassuming in daylight, its faded sign reading Elysium Labs, Private Property. The windows were frosted, impossible to see through, but a side door was slightly ajar. My pulse raced as I slipped inside, the air cool and heavy with that same chemical smell from the coffee. The interior was a mix of sterile lab and cluttered storage. Metal tables held vials, beakers, and laptops, while shelves were stacked with boxes labeled with codes like the ones in Daniel's notebook. I moved quietly, snapping photos with my phone. One table had a tray of clear vials identical to the one in our kitchen. A clipboard nearby listed trial subjects with numbers, not names, and notes like Subject 7, increased tolerance, and Subject 12, adverse reaction. My stomach twisted. Was Daniel a subject? Was I? I was about to grab the clipboard when I heard footsteps. I ducked behind a stack of boxes, holding my breath. 2 men entered, one in a lab coat, the other in a suit. Their voices were low, but I caught fragments. Dosage is too high for most, the lab coat said. We're seeing side effects, nausea, tremors. Then adjust it. The suit snapped. We're too close to stop now. The investors want results. They moved out of earshot, and I slipped out the way I came, my heart pounding. Back in my car, I sat shaking, piecing it together. Elysium Labs was running some kind of experiment, and Daniel was involved. Maybe not just as a subject, but as part of it. The chemical in the coffee, the notebook, the warehouse, it all pointed to something big, something dangerous. That night, I confronted Daniel. I waited until we were alone. Max asleep in his crate, the house quiet. I held up the photo of the vial from our kitchen. What is this, Daniel? And don't tell me it's nothing. His face went pale, his jaw tightening. Where did you get that? In our cabinet. The same stuff that was in your coffee. Dimethyl sulfate. Toxic. Care. To explain? He stood, pacing, his hands clenched. You don't understand, Claire. It's not what you think. Then tell me. My voice cracked, fear and anger mixing. Are you poisoning me? Yourself? What's going on? He stopped, his eyes meeting mine. And for a moment, I saw the man I'd married, vulnerable, scared. It's not poison, he said quietly. It's experimental, a compound we're developing at work. It's supposed to enhance focus, memory. I've been testing it. On yourself? I asked, incredulous. In our coffee? He nodded, looking away. It was small doses, controlled. I didn't want you to know because I knew you'd freak out. Freak out? Daniel, this is insane. You're putting chemicals in our house, in our food, without telling me? What if I'd drunk more? You weren't supposed to, he snapped, then softened. I'm sorry, Claire. I should have told you. But this project, it's huge. It could change everything. I stared at him, my mind reeling. He was admitting to it, but it didn't feel like the whole truth. What's Elysium Labs? I asked, watching his reaction. His eyes widened, just for a second, before he masked it. How do you know about that? I followed you, I admitted, to the warehouse. I saw the vials, the notes. Are you testing this on other people? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I grabbed my phone and walked out, locking myself in the guest room. I needed time to think, to figure out my next move. Daniel knocked, pleaded, but I didn't open the door. That night, I slept with my phone under my pillow. The photos of the notebook and warehouse backed up to the cloud. The next morning, Daniel was gone before I woke up. No note, no text, just his car missing from the driveway. I felt a mix of relief and dread. Part of me wanted to believe his story, that he was just testing some miracle drug on himself. But the secrecy, the warehouse, the subjects in the notes, it didn't add up. I needed more answers, and I couldn't wait for him to come clean. I started with his laptop again. This time, I dug deeper into the Project Elysium folder. One document outlined a clinical trial, but it wasn't official. No FDA approval, no ethics board. It described a proprietary compound, dimethyl sulfate was mentioned again, designed to rewire neural pathways for enhanced cognition. Side effects included nausea, memory lapses, and, in rare cases, severe neurological damage. My hands shook as I read. Daniel wasn't just experimenting, he was part of something reckless, maybe illegal. I found an email chain between Daniel and someone named Dr. Elena Voss, a name that hadn't come up before. The emails were vague but urgent, discussing subject, recruitment, and disposal protocols. One line chilled me. Ensure no traceability to Elysium. We can't afford leaks. I searched Elena Voss online. She was a neuroscientist, formerly at a prestigious university, now listed as a consultant for private firms. No mention of Elysium Labs, but a LinkedIn profile showed she'd worked with Nexlify briefly. Was she the one running this? I sent her a message, posing as a journalist interested in her research, hoping to get her talking. Then I went back to the warehouse. This time, I brought a tiny Bluetooth camera I used for vlogging my design work. I hid it in a bush near the entrance, set to record motion. If Daniel or anyone else went in, I'd have proof. I didn't stay long, too risky. But as I drove home, my phone pinged. Elena Voss had replied, "Happy to discuss my work. Call me tomorrow." That night, Daniel came home late, his face drawn. He didn't mention the fight, just mumbled about a long day and went to bed. I stayed up, watching the camera feed on my phone. Around midnight, it caught movement. 2 figures entering the warehouse. One unmistakably Daniel. The other was a woman, tall, with short dark hair. Elena Voss? They were inside for an hour, then left carrying a box. I couldn't see what was in it, but my gut told me it wasn't good. The next day, I called Voss. Her voice was smooth, professional, but guarded. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," she said when I mentioned Elysium Labs. "I consult for many firms. Perhaps you're mistaken." "I'm not," I said, taking a risk. "I know about Project Elysium. The trials, the chemicals. I have evidence." There was a long pause. "Be careful what you dig into," she said finally. "Some things are better left alone." Then she hung up. Her warning only fueled me. I contacted a friend, Mia, a lawyer who specialized in corporate fraud. I sent her everything. The photos, the lab results, the laptop files. "This is bad, Claire," she said after reviewing them. "Unregulated human trials, toxic chemicals. You need to go to the authorities. But first, get out of that house. If Daniel's involved, it's not safe." I didn't want to believe he'd hurt me, but I couldn't ignore the evidence. I packed a bag, took Max, and checked into a motel across town. I left Daniel a note. "I know about Elysium. We need to talk." I didn't trust him, to be honest, but I wanted him to know I wasn't clueless. That night, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." My blood ran cold. Was it Voss? Someone else at Elysium? I forwarded it to Mia, who urged me to file a police report. I was about to when Daniel called. "Claire, where are you?" His voice was frantic. "We need to talk. It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I snapped. "Because it looks like you're poisoning people." He was silent for a moment. "Meet me tomorrow. Neutral ground. The park by the library. I'll explain everything." Against my better judgment, I agreed. I needed answers, and if he was willing to talk, I'd hear him out. But I wasn't going alone. I asked Mia to come with me, just in case. The park was quiet the next morning, the air crisp with autumn chill. Mia stood a few yards away, pretending to read a book on a bench, her phone ready to record. Daniel arrived on time, looking haggard, his usual neat appearance replaced by dark circles and a wrinkled shirt. He sat across from me at a picnic table, his hands clasped tightly. "I'm sorry," he started, his voice low. I never meant for you to get caught up in this." "Then tell me the truth," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "All of it." He took a deep breath. "Elysium Labs is a side project, off the books. Nexlify funds it, but it's not public. They're developing a drug to boost cognitive function, memory, focus, problem solving. It's supposed to be a game changer, like Adderall but permanent. I was brought in to analyze data, not to run trials, but things escalated." "Escalated how?" I pressed. He looked away, his jaw tight. "They started human trials without approval. Volunteers, mostly employees, but some didn't know what they were signing up for. The compound, dimethyl sulfate, is part of it. It's risky, but the results were incredible. People were solving complex problems in hours, remembering details from years ago, but there were side effects. Some got sick, a few didn't recover." My stomach churned. "And you went along with this?" "I didn't have a choice," he said, his voice breaking. "Voss, she's the lead. She's brilliant but ruthless. Once I was in, she made it clear I couldn't back out. They have leverage, my job, our savings, everything tied to Nexlify. I started testing it on myself to understand it better, to find a safer dose." "In our coffee?" I asked, incredulous. He nodded, ashamed. "I kept it separate, in that vial. I never meant for you to drink it. That was a mistake." "A mistake?" I laughed bitterly. "You brought a toxic chemical into our home, Daniel. You lied to me." "I know," he said, his eyes pleading. "I was trying to protect you. If I told you, you'd have wanted to report it, and they'd have come after us. Voss has connections. People who make problems disappear." I thought of the threatening text. "Someone already has," I said, showing him my phone. His face went white. "That's why I'm telling you now. I'm out, Claire. I told Voss I'm done, but we need to leave, both of us. They won't let this go." I wanted to believe him, but trust was gone. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said. "Not until I know everything." He hesitated, then pulled out a USB drive. "This has all the data, trial results, emails, everything. Give it to the police, the FDA, whoever. Just promise me you'll be careful." I took the drive, my mind racing. Was this a genuine confession, or was he covering his tracks? Mia signaled me from the bench, a subtle nod. She'd recorded everything. I stood, my voice cold. "I need time, Daniel, don't follow me." I left him there, the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. At the motel, Mia and I reviewed the files. They were damning. Proof of illegal trials, falsified data, even names of subjects who'd suffered severe side effects, including 2 deaths. Daniel's name was all over the reports, but so was Voss's, along with several Nexlify executives. Mia called a contact at the Seattle PD, and we turned over the evidence. The police moved fast, raiding Elysium Labs that night. They found the vials, the equipment, and records matching Daniel's files. Voss was arrested, along with 3 others. Daniel turned himself in the next day, promising to cooperate in exchange for leniency. The weeks that followed were a blur. The story broke in the local news, then went national. Tech startup linked to illegal human trials. Nexlify's stock tanked, and Elysium Labs was shut down. Daniel's testimony was key, detailing how Voss had coerced employees into participating, using financial pressure and threats. He was sentenced to community service and probation, a light punishment for his cooperation. Voss and the executives faced years in prison. I didn't go back to our house. I moved in with Mia temporarily, then found a small apartment across town. Max came with me, his wagging tail a small comfort in the chaos. Daniel tried to reach out, leaving voicemails about starting over, but I couldn't forgive him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The man I'd loved had betrayed me, not just with lies, but with a reckless disregard for our life together. The USB drive had been my lifeline, proof that I wasn't crazy. I gave copies to the police, the FDA, and a journalist friend who published an exposé. The public outcry was fierce, and new regulations were proposed to prevent similar experiments. I felt a small sense of victory, but it was bittersweet. My marriage was over, my trust shattered. One evening as I sat in my new apartment sipping coffee, real coffee, no chemicals, I got a call from Priya at the lab. "You did good, Claire," she said. "That could have been a lot worse." "Yeah," thanked her, staring at the mug in my hand. The aroma was rich, comforting, the way it used to be. But every sip reminded me of that morning, the bitter taste of truth. I'd rebuilt my life, piece by piece, but the scars remained. Thank you for diving into the bitter taste of truth. If you enjoyed this story and want more gripping tales, please support our channel. Subscribe, share, and join our community to keep these stories coming. Your support means the world. Let's keep uncovering the truth together.